What's up, Melanated family? This is your boy Harrison bringing you another episode of History Matters, where we explore the history behind the people, places, and situations from our past to get a clear understanding of how we are to move forward. Now, please do me a favor, family, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can be alerted when we release new videos on our Melanated Fathers TV YouTube channel. So today on History Matters, family, we are going to talk about the Niagara Movement, one of the first civil rights organizations here in the United States. So let's get it going. Now, at the start of the 20th century, at this time, the 14th and 15th Amendment were in full effect, which were laws that were supposed to create civil rights for Black people, but didn't really change much in this country. And, the racism and disenfranchisement still ran rampant. Now, Reconstruction was taking place at this time as well, which was also designed to address the Reconstruction era was taking place at this time as well, which was also designed to address the inequalities in our society. But again, just like the 14th and 15th Amendment, didn't do much to change the status quo here in the country. Now, not to mention that in 1877, the Jim Crow laws had begun, and that was basically legal segregation here in the United States, mostly in the southern states. So I'm just letting you know what the environment was around the time that the Niagara Movement was created, okay? Now, the Niagara Movement was a civil rights group that was founded in 1905 by W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a sociologist, historian, and a very popular civil rights activist, and William Monroe Trotter, who was the creator of the Boston Guardian, an African-American newspaper that spoke out against racist policies that were going on at the time in the country. Now, to create the Niagara Movement, they gathered on the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. Legend has it, they met at Niagara Falls because they were denied admittance into a hotel in Buffalo, New York. Historians and even W.E.B. Du Bois himself did come out and refute this, basically saying, they chose Niagara Falls just because of the scenery, the environment, and just a really relaxed place to come up with ideas and get things together. Now, after that, annual meetings were held at symbolic locations like Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, and Boston's Faneuil Hall. Now, the members of the Niagara Movement wanted social and political change for melanated people here in the United States. Now, the Niagara Movement comprised of 29 business owners, teachers, and clergy. Now, it's important to note that, the Niagara Movement wasn't the only or wasn't the first civil rights organization here in the United States. They were taking their blueprint from the premier Black organization before them, which was the National AfroAmerican Council, which was started by a newspaper editor named T. Thomas Fortune and a pastor named Bishop Alexander Walters of the African Methodist Zion Church. And they basically wanted to create, when creating the National Afro-American Council, they basically wanted to create something like the National Afro-American League, which was actually the first civil rights organization in the country that tackled racism and segregation. Now, it's important to note also that the National Afro-American Council had other prominent members, which would be like W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. So W.E.B. Du Bois was a part of this organization before he started the Niagara Movement. The reason why he left the organization was because he had disagreements with Booker T. Washington over Washington's conservative approach to race relations and his apparent influence over this organization. So because of all of this, W.E.B. Du Bois decided to go off on his own and form the Niagara Movement. Now, one of the main inspirations for him starting the Niagara Movement was the rift that he had with Booker T. Washington. And he basically combated his philosophy of what Du Bois coined as accommodationism. And really, he looked at it as Booker T. Washington was attempting to get Black Americans on, not changing the status quo. Now, like I was saying, there was a rift between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. And now, W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter both used their platforms to express contempt for Washington's ideology. Trotter, who was the editor of the Boston Guardian, used his power to combat Washington's message, while Du Bois' book, Soul of Black Folks, addressed Washington's lowered expectations of melanated people as well. Now, one of the things that stood out about the Niagara movement was, unlike other Black organizations, um, they they became really powerful because they were unapologetic for their demands for equal rights. Now, it was said that Booker T. Washington didn't really agree with the Niagara movement strategy, so he made it a point to use his power at the time to somewhat suppress their message. Now, because W.E.B. Du Bois, like I was saying, um, he didn't agree much with Booker T. Washington, and because they were two powerful Black men at the time, he didn't want Washington's influence to determine how Black people would move forward. And in 1895, Booker T. Washington was a part of what was called the Atlanta Compromise, which was basically a deal that he agreed upon with other Southern white leaders. Now, essentially, he agreed that melanated people would work and submit to white political rule, and in return, whites promised to give melanated people basic education and due process in the law. Now, another thing, melanated folks would have to do to get this deal is they would have to agree not to focus on equality, integration, justice, or anything the government wasn't providing at the time. So, as you can imagine, many melanated people weren't necessarily happy with that agreement, and W.E.B. Du Bois was just one of the individuals that spoke about this publicly. Now, Booker T. Washington topped all of this off by creating a speech that stated these same facts. Now, the name Atlanta Compromise was coined by W.E.B. Du Bois to denote his dissatisfaction with Booker T. Washington's decisions. And, at the time, Booker T. Washington would be considered a traitor by many. Now, the Niagara movement created a list of demands called the Declaration of Principles that included an end to segregation and discrimination in unions, courts, and public accommodations, and they wanted equality in economics and in education as well. Even though they were able to create 30 branches across the country, the formation of the organization didn't necessarily affect any legislation and didn't experience much success for several reasons. One of those reasons were it began to be a lot of infighting and disagreements between the leaders of the organization. They didn't garner much financial support from the Black population. And of course, there was strong opposition to what they were doing at the time by the likes of Booker T. Washington and his supporters. So, the organization disbanded in 1910. I'm sorry, 1909 they disbanded, and that movement, the Niagara movement, that organization was the precursor for the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which was created in 1909 after a race riot in Springfield, Illinois. Left Black residents dead. This new organization was started by basically some of the stronger members of the Niagara movement, W.E.B. Du Bois being one of those members. And he would basically team up with other civil rights leaders that felt the same way he felt, as well as liberal rights, or I'm sorry, as well as liberal whites who was concerned with social justice and liberating melanated people at that time also. So the NAACP was started by W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Mary White Ovington, Henry Moskowitz, William Wallings, and, a few others. So it's important to know, even though the Niagara movement wasn't necessarily a success, they were the precursor to the NAACP, which at this point, many Black people in our society have problems with the NAACP as far as how effective they have been. But ultimately, they are an organization that was created to help melanated citizens. So it's important to note. That the Niagara movement and individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois are really important because he made it a point to keep continuing on. He was a part of several organizations until he was able to get to gather the respect and the reasoning to have an organization that can stay around and affect our community. So that has been the story about the Niagara movement. Please do me a favor, family. Like I said, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button so you can be alerted when new videos are released on the Melanated Fathers TV YouTube page. This has been another History Matters episode. I'm out.